Consult Asia delivers cutting-edge training to empower people to achieve their maximum potential. Engaged in developing and delivering customized learning and development programs specializing in leadership, business, sales, and life coaching. True to its name, Consult Asia works with partners worldwide in Asia, North America, Europe, the United Kingdom, and Australia. All from diverse industries: hospitality, tourism, banking, real estate, retail, direct sales, legal, manufacturing, and oil and gas. Consult Asia closely works with partners in their people development and business enhancement programs to achieve their business goals. And the Consult Asia Global team is just as world-class. Consultants and facilitators, coaches and mentors are industry experts from distinct backgrounds and cultures. Consult Asia delivers only high-quality training solutions and proactively pursues strategic alliances with global firms and consultants to stay ahead in the industry. Consult Asia Global, the world's preferred training group.
Hi everyone, Tinette Cortes here, and welcome to my Facebook Live entitled How to Innovate Yourself. And you guys might be wondering, what am I going to do next? You know, given the pandemic, given all the the challenges that have been happening around the world, what am I going to do with myself? What am I going to do with my business or my team or even with my own family? I don't know what to do anymore. So tonight I've invited a very, very good friend of mine based in Australia, and he is actually a creativity and innovation expert. Wow, isn't that interesting? A creativity and innovation expert. And he's actually had a very successful career in the hospitality industry as a learning and development executive. And he's transitioned his life into life coaching, executive coaching. He's going to share with us a little bit more about himself later on. But if you guys are thinking of how you could possibly improve yourself and how you could possibly, take the next step in making your life a little better than where it was the last 6 months, then definitely we would love to have you join us in this episode. So without further ado, let me introduce Glenn Crowther Wilkinson. Hello, Glenn.
Hi, Tinette. How are you?
I'm really good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm glad we get this chance. It's wonderful.
Yes, I know. I mean, I know every week we have our usual chinwag, but this time we decided to do it live on Facebook, right? So
Yeah.
how's it going? How's it going in the Gold Coast? By the way, Glenn is based in the Gold Coast. Wow. How's the weather?
It's a very warm day today. It's a warm day.
Is
today.
it really?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're getting past autumn. We're into summer. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, Glenn. So as you know, we are having this conversation tonight because we want to, if not equip, we want to empower and inspire our viewers, our friends who are watching. I know you have friends watching from Australia and China as well.
Right.
And I mean, my friends are usually used to watching my Facebook Live at 8 o'clock in the evening in the Philippines. But tonight is a little bit different because of the time difference between Australia and the Philippines. So anyway, Glenn, so tell us a little bit more about you. I mean, perhaps how you have being in the hospitality industry for a long time, I mean, with
Mm-hmm.
very reputable chains, how did you transition into coaching or being on your, in your own business?
Okay. So I'll try and give you the Reader's Digest version, right? The very short, brief.
No,
So
you
I'm
can make it
Australian.
long. We have time.
Can I? Oh, that's good. You know me, right? I taught you the word chinwag, so
Yeah,
I
exactly.
like to talk. But I'll
Right.
try and make it succinct, and that is, so I'm an Australian, and I was an exchange student to Thailand for 12 months when I was 17. And that was between my year 11 and year 12. And that has something to do with the motivation for change and innovation, right? So that's probably where my story starts. And then I spent 1 year in Thailand. I came back, I graduated, I went to university, and I thought I want to study Chinese. So I studied Chinese at university, and then I went to China. I studied at university there, and eventually stayed for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's not a very long time. That's not
No, it's not a long time. No, 30
not a long time at all.
It's more than half my life. Anyway, I had several different careers while I was there, and in early 2016, I moved back to Australia for my family, and hence a relearning and starting all over again of doing things differently. So several stages of career transition and getting out of hospitality, and then moving into training, facilitating, coaching, and where I work a lot now is in creativity and innovation, and hence our conversation tonight. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So creativity and innovation. I mean, there's a lot of questions about these two terms. Sometimes people are confused between the two. So would you care to enlighten us the difference between creativity and innovation?
So my colleagues and I, we have a very simple definition of innovation, and that is to think new thoughts, take new actions, and to solve problems, or to solve issues that add value to the customer and the organization. So we look at these as two separate activities: the thinking process and the execution of the idea. So for us, when we work with teams, we're talking about, first of all, coming up with that area, that focus that you want to work on, and then how do you think differently? And I know you've attended one of the Think Out of the Box sessions.
This is innovation.
Sorry?
Are we talking about innovation here?
No, this is creativity.
Creativity. Okay.
Thinking differently.
Okay, all right.
So first of all, how do you think differently? Right? We all have our patterns of thinking. So how do we think differently? And then when we've thought of the different potential ideas, how do we then move into some kind of execution, which is the real innovation? And that's where we add value to the organization and to the customer.
All right.
Just to separate them, because again, I mentioned to you earlier that there's quite often a confusion from people when in organizations, or even just in casual conversations, people say, oh, that's a good innovation, or be creative, or think out of the box. And often people will just say, oh no, I'm not creative, or innovation, that's just too difficult. Right? So we don't do any of that.
Exactly.
And there's always excuses or reasons why people don't do it. But if we break it down to that simple definition, right, to think new thoughts, take new actions to solve real needs that adds value to the customer and to the organization.
Okay.
So thinking differently is creativity.
Okay.
Execution, or is innovation that's taking action? Yep.
All right. So guys, you heard that. You made it so simple that now I can clearly understand that you cannot, you can always be creative, but not put it into action. So it's a waste of ideas. Is that correct? And what you're trying to say also is that it's impossible to innovate without going through the creative thinking process. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say that thinking of those ideas is a waste. Quite often we need to have, and just think about yourself and everybody who's joined us. Just think, every day you have hundreds of ideas.
Correct.
Right? You think, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do that.
Mhm.
Oh, there's a problem, here's something. And you think to do them,
Mhm.
but you don't always action them. It's not possible
Exactly.
to action all the ideas. So
Mhm.
we need to, quite often we might think, you know, oh, I've got to pick the kids up from school.
Mhm.
How am I going to do that? I could let
Mhm.
them walk home, I could pick them up, I could send an Uber,
Mhm.
put them on the bus. There are a number of options to do that.
Mhm.
And we don't action all of them because some of those might be too expensive, taking an Uber.
Yeah.
They might be too young to get on a bus by themselves or to walk
Mhm.
home by themselves. So we
Okay.
might pick them up ourselves. That's all.
Mhm.
Have somebody go
Okay.
pick them up for us.
Okay. All right. Well, then, Glenn, how do you know whether the thoughts are being creative, or how do you know that these are actually creative thoughts or not, or if they're just normal thoughts? You know, as you said, creativity is thinking differently.
Yeah.
So, in any situation, say, for instance, now, especially because we have people working from home, or people closing their businesses, or people losing their jobs, suffering from cabin fever with their families. I mean, there are just so many issues these days, and if people want to make a change or create change in their lives, I'm thinking, based on what you're saying, is creativity and innovation would play a very, important role. So,
Mm.
so what would be the first step, for instance? I mean, how would I know that I'm being creative, or if it's just a noise in my head?
Okay, so I go back to you made a comment just previously that how do we know that that thought is creative?
Creative, yeah.
Well, I think all thoughts are creative
Mm-hmm.
just by definition. However, the concept of that person sitting alone in their desk, having that eureka moment, that thought that comes to their head that suddenly gives them the answer, that might be in a myth, that might be a
Yeah.
thought that we have of
Mm-hmm.
what a genius or a creative person is like,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not totally true. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that innovation or the creative motivation
Mm-hmm.
comes from what I call with my colleagues, we call the issue or opportunity. So
Mm-hmm.
an issue is right now, people, as you said, people are facing issues, pandemic,
Yeah.
lockdown, cabin
Mm-hmm.
fever.
Mm-hmm.
They're things that people are feeling uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
Now, when people feel uncomfortable with something, when there is an issue, then they'll start to think sometimes positive ideas, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
negative ideas, right?
Yeah.
But if
Right.
we're thinking on a way to resolve that issue, so going back to our definition, to solve a real need.
Mm-hmm.
So if people
Okay.
are in lockdown, if they are in cabin fever, they
Mm-hmm.
have an issue. So they'll start to generate ideas. What could I do differently? How could I
Mm-hmm.
alleviate this?
Yeah.
So they frame that in their mind, and then
Mm-hmm.
they may not do a formal, like we would do with a group
Yeah.
in an
Mm-hmm.
organization, do a brainstorming session, but they might,
Yeah.
while they're doodling one day or on the phone
Mm-hmm.
talking to somebody or while they're
Mm-hmm.
having their breakfast or in the shower, they will have a
Mm-hmm.
number of ideas.
Yeah.
And then suddenly those ideas will start to take more form and more shape. And
Mm-hmm.
once somebody feels happy with that, then they're probably going to go off and
Mm-hmm.
take action. The thing is that
Mm-hmm.
the action doesn't always mean that they're going to be successful.
Right.
They could
Right.
fail, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we also talk about, or I also talk about the inherent risk of doing anything differently.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you start, when we say you're thinking different thoughts, it doesn't mean that they're wildly different. It just
Mm-hmm.
might mean that you have that motivation to think because you have an issue or an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
looking at the same situation during the COVID pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody might think, well, hey, I've got a chance here to start a business. Here is an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, lots of
Yeah.
people are staying at home. They're
Yeah.
bored. I wonder if people would like to buy board games or
Mm-hmm.
some other things at home. So that might be an opportunity for someone to do something. So they see
Mm-hmm.
that the same condition or the same situation For some people, it might be an issue or a problem to be solved. For other
Yeah.
people, it might be an opportunity to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
How they frame that, right, then leads
Mm-hmm.
to their new thoughts and eventually some action.
Okay. So what you're saying here is that people, people start becoming creative either when there's an opportunity that they see or an issue or a difficulty that they're facing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, because that was actually my question. When do people actually need to start thinking of being creative and start innovating? So as you said, when people are faced with such circumstances, would you care to, I mean, seriously, I am still at a loss in terms of the whole process. How do people go through the creativity or creative process? Is that how I should call it? Creative process or creativity process. Like if I want to be creative about something, for instance, I mean, you and I are in the same line of business. And if we want to be creative, I know we have been having these weekly chin wags, and I think we're very creative in our discussions. But for the benefit of our viewers tonight, how could they possibly go through that whole process? Let's say they're just on their own and all they have is a piece of paper and a pen, and they'd like to sort of, come up with these creative ideas.
So if I was doing something on my own, if I didn't have the benefit of bouncing ideas off another person or engaging another person to challenge my rationale, some of my ideas, I would do this. If I had framed my issue or opportunity, and that might be, how could I benefit from the continued and ongoing pandemic situation? And I would write that down on a piece of paper, and I would sit down and not move from my desk until I had written out 100 ideas.
Wow. So it should be a lot of ideas.
Yeah. Yes. So and this is part of the creative, not so much the creative process, but
the exercise.
the exercise of thinking differently.
Yeah.
So some people will say, "Oh, okay, I'll write down 10 or 20. I'll go and cook lunch, then I'll come back. I'll write another 10 or 20 ideas, and then I'll go and do the vacuuming. Then I'll come back." No. The way to do this is to sit down and write out 100 ideas.
Oh, wow.
It might take you half an hour. It might take you 2 hours. But if you framed that issue or opportunity quite clearly, how can I take advantage of, or how can I use this time better to, and then write out 100 ideas. Not going away, forcing yourself to write out 100 ideas. At the end of that exercise, several things will happen. One, you'll find as you review the list, if you've got it, you review the list, you will find that the first 40 or 50 ideas are very simple. They're very basic. There's nothing really too exciting about them. But say from 51 to 70, or maybe 80, wow, there's something really strange, weird, interesting, things that, because it's hard to write 100 ideas. Then number 81 to 100, there could be really some diamonds in the rough. So that's the first thing you do, is you review and you look at all the ideas. The second thing is you'll probably notice that some of those ideas are repeated. They might, because when you're writing those 100 ideas, there's no filter. The technique here is don't filter as you're writing. The whole idea,
just let them flow.
The purpose of the exercise is to write down anything. Just write 100. If you find that there's some ideas have come up a number of times, if the idea is to, it says start an online business, and that I've written that 12 times. Okay, maybe that's a good idea because it keeps popping up all the time.
Or it's really in your subconscious because it keeps coming
It's really
out.
in your subconscious. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing is that you might want to have a criteria. You might want to set yourself a criteria. Well, what would I evaluate as being a good idea? So then you think about how would you evaluate those ideas? Is it feasible? Do I have enough budget to do so? Will it help me achieve my goal? And then you review
or do I have time to do it?
Do I have time to do it? Do I have the resources to do it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly right. So just that one simple thing of writing out 100 ideas is a good practice in helping your own individual creativity.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't suggest that with a group of people, because if you've got a group of 5 or 6, then you'd end up with 500 or 600 ideas, and
that's
right? But the other thing about that is, as my colleagues and I often say, is creativity is like we want to achieve the buffet table of ideas.
Okay.
It's like walking into a restaurant, and if you look at the menu and you have to choose one thing, quite often that without a choice, if you don't have a choice of things, you might make the wrong decision. You choose the wrong thing.
Okay.
And I'm always reminded of people who like to watch Mr. Bean. There's a very old Mr. Bean episode where he orders one thing. He doesn't know what it is. And it's basically something he just doesn't like to eat, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
Right? So he's made a poor choice. But if it's a buffet table, then you can take some of this, you can take some of that, and you start to figure out what you like, what will suit you, what will help you achieve your goal, right? Or meet your need, whatever that might be.
Yeah. Interesting.
So by writing out 100 ideas, you've reached that goal of having that buffet table of ideas just by yourself.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Glenn, we're going to get more into that. I think that's a very interesting idea that you're sharing with us. But before we do that, I just want to say hello to some of our viewers. I'd like to say hello to Mark Principe, who's watching from Nueva Ecija, Philippines. Hello, Mark. How are you? He says, hello, Ma'am Tinette. And Mrs. Glazer is also saying hello from London. She's watching from London. So hi, Mrs. Glazer. Thanks for watching. Okay, guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in on the comment section so that Glenn can, share with us his pieces of wisdom on this topic. So Glenn, you were saying something earlier about, so you were saying that it's important to write down 100 ideas and then try to come up with a criteria, and then slowly you're going to try to figure out what is it that suits you best, that would help solve the problem, or that would, achieve your goal. Let's just try to put that first, because we all know that before we can actually innovate our team and our businesses, so at some point we need to go through the process ourselves, for ourselves. I mean, how can you throw in good ideas or suggestions if you yourself are not, improving as an individual? So to those viewers that we have tonight who want to improve themselves or want to take the next big step, what would be, perhaps you can share some, concrete examples on how they could do this. I mean, the idea is brilliant, but let's say let's say I'm working from home. I just lost my job, for example, and I'm thinking of whether to do, to start up a business or to apply for another job or to migrate somewhere. How can you possibly share with us the, help us envision that exercise? So is he gonna, or is she or he gonna get his pen, start writing down, okay, these are the things that I need to do, etc.
So I think that's a challenge for the way you've framed that. And if I go back to that 100 ideas, activity.
Mm-hmm.
So as an individual,
Yeah.
not having the chance to perhaps connect and talk with other people
Mm-hmm.
initially,
Yeah.
you come up with those 100 ideas and then choose 5.
Mm-hmm.
Choose the 5 that you think have potential.
Okay.
And then, then look at your criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have the time? Do I have the resources? Do I have, will this help me achieve that goal? Will that get me closer to what I want to complete? Will it alleviate my pain? Will it give me some advantage?
Mm-hmm.
And if it meets all those criteria, then you shift from the thinking mode into execution mode.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to innovation, innovation in our definition, it's adding value to the customer and the organization. So sometimes I could be the customer. I could just be myself. Right? And there
You
is
are
no
your own
organization.
customer. Mm-hmm.
Yes, right. There is no organization. It's just me at home figuring out what I could do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would say doing that exercise is probably quite challenging for some people. And setting the criteria, coming up with 5 possibilities, choose the top 5.
Yeah.
And then investigate further. So based on those 5, it doesn't mean that you can just pack your bag and go somewhere. You said if you want to immigrate, and I write down 100 countries and I choose one, it doesn't mean I can go there, right?
Yeah.
So it might mean maybe instead of immigrating, maybe I need to move to a different part of the country, maybe get a different job, maybe sell my house and rent a house, or stop living in a house, go live on a boat.
Okay.
Or go camping for 12 months. Once you've chosen those 5, then I would suggest the individual or the person go talk to people. We do have the opportunity to talk to family, friends, and ask them. So I've got here's my challenge. Here's what I want to achieve. I now have these 5 options.
Yeah.
Give me some tips. How would you do it? If I wanted to do this, what's the next step? Because quite often to action any one of those 5, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to go about it. So there's more to it after that. And then I'd say that's dependent upon the actual specific person, the challenge they're trying to achieve, and the 5 ideas that they've
personal
finally
vision.
chosen.
Yeah. Or values, for that matter, as well.
Yes, their personal values, their vision, whatever it is, their particular circumstances.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I know this is probably not just me, but I personally struggle sometimes with execution. I have a lot of creative ideas. I have a lot of, unique ideas. In fact, out of the box ideas. But I end up not acting on them. And I don't know if it's fear or self-doubt or because I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but usually I have an idea and it's so big and it's so out of this world. But I know in my heart that it's achievable, that I can achieve it, that it's doable, that it will have a positive impact on the world, but I end up not doing it. So in your experience of coaching executives and leaders and organizations, have you ever encountered, people like myself who have a lot of ideas, who have a lot of, in fact, very creative ideas? And then it's so funny because sometimes when I share these ideas with friends or with associates, I end up seeing later on that these people have actually executed my idea and I'm out of the equation. It happens so many times. It happens so many times. So
I've had the same feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many other people have as well. You think of something and you say to yourself, that's a brilliant idea. But you don't do anything with it. And then 2 weeks later, you hear of somebody else who's actually done it. And then your chance is gone.
Yeah.
I would say several things here. And I've coached a number of people similar to us, executives in organizations. And they often have very creative ideas. So as we, in the coaching sessions, they create lots of options and come up with different ideas. And then they decide what they want to do. So as a coach, coaches aren't there to tell people what to do. So I'm not about to make judgment on what, when, and how they execute something. I might think another idea is brilliant. And sometimes I've been in a coaching conversation, speaking with an executive. They've raised a number of ideas, and I've gone, gee, that's very good, and I've written it down.
Yeah.
And then I've applied that in my job. They may not have, but I have. I think there's several things at play, and you said fear, self-doubt. I think there's also reality and being pragmatic. I think, and I wrote down here, expediency. I think in an organization, or even in a family, you might have a great idea to do something, and that's great if you had the right conditions. Sometimes the conditions aren't there for you because you have a family, you have a team, you have KPI to achieve, you have other things to take care of. So whereas, see, we're not looking for the ideal action. We're looking for what's doable, what's achievable. And as I've coached people, and any coaches who are listening, you ask questions, and you create enough positive tension with the person you're coaching that they push themselves to do something new and different. Yeah. And if they do, and that's enough. But I think perhaps what you're also talking about is missed opportunity.
Definitely.
Perhaps you've got lots of ideas.
That's the whole point of my question. It's missed opportunity.
Yes, and that's okay. I tell people the story when I do workshops. I ask who built and developed the very first helicopter. And some people know the answer. It's a Russian engineer called Sikorsky. Sikorsky helicopters, world famous. And then I stop there and I say, actually, Leonardo da Vinci, in his sketches, had sketches of a flying machine that looked like a helicopter. Yeah. So when da Vinci drew his sketches, there certainly wasn't the technology to do it. So it was there, just a concept or an idea. But it never got actioned. Yeah. So then Sikorsky and other engineers at the time, had the technology. They could build what looked like a helicopter, but it didn't fly. Yeah. But basically, it failed. Why? Because the power of the machines were not big enough to lift it off the ground. The materials were too heavy. The technology on the rotor blades and the steering and the controls were not advanced enough. So what did he do? Did he throw that idea away? No. He shelved it. So he just put it away for a while until the technology had caught up even further. So with the invention or the discovery of lighter, stronger materials, titanium, aluminium, the power of motors got better. The rotor blades became more advanced. Yeah. Then he was able to build an actual working helicopter. Okay. So
he shelved it for a while.
He shelved it. Yeah.
And waited.
Yeah. So in the innovation process that I work with teams and organizations, there's a part where the team or the individual or the leader has to make a decision on what they want to do. And so I asked them, what are you going to do with these other ideas that haven't been chosen? Because you might have 50 ideas, you can't put them all into effect. Yeah. So what do you do? So I just say bank them. Yeah. Shelve them or bank them. Because as you work around the process, you'll eventually come back to some of those ideas. And as you start to work in an organization and innovate in an organization, you find that the more you do, the more you go forward, the more you understand about the real situation, customers' needs, and coming back and revisiting those ideas So revisiting them on a regular basis to see what could you use now, what could you pick up and bring into play. And so it's a depository or a repository of or a bank of ideas that you can continually go back to. So when we talk about brainstorming in the innovation process, the creativity process, you don't need to do a brainstorming all the time. You may already have a number of ideas which have potential and haven't been picked and worked on yet.
Yeah.
So they're already there.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, Glenn, is there, as I listened to you, you said something like, you don't have to brainstorm all the time because there are probably ideas in place already. So it's just a matter of probably presenting them to, let's say, your team. And we're talking about teams now. From the individual level, we're talking about teams now. How do you get the buy-in of the team, for instance? Let's say you've got ideas, and you personally know that these ideas are very healthy, very good for the team. It's for the benefit of everybody. But let's say some people in the team are not very convinced, or of course, there's that, this is where communication and dialogue comes into play. But again, how do you move forward with a team who's not open to any creative ideas? And they're just used to saying, this is how we used to do it. This is how, this is what's familiar. This is what's been working for so long. Why are you changing it? Why are you disrupting it? So
yeah. So let me go back and let me just say that there's a process which I use with my clients, and it's called clockwise because it's like a clock. It has 12 times. And at each time, there is a specific thing to do regarding creativity and innovation.
Yeah.
And rather than go through all of those 12, unless somebody really wants to know, I just say that, so let me just step back again and say, while creativity quite often is an individual activity, innovation is definitely a team activity. So your question about buy-in in your team and the scenario you just painted could be that the leader has the ideas and is asking someone to act on those ideas. I would work it a little bit differently to say to that team leader, you may have some good ideas, doesn't mean that they are the best ideas.
Yeah.
And so in this innovation process, we talk about what we just talked about, having a clear focus, being able to then generate ideas, then being able to talk about those ideas, looking for different aspects of the idea which need to be fleshed out a little bit more, because we want to have what I call a conversation of understanding or getting clarity on the ideas. Because sometimes an idea is presented and people don't understand.
Yeah.
So that takes a lot of time. So ideas have to be talked about so that there's understanding.
Okay.
Once people understand all of the ideas, and there could be 10, 20, or 30 that have potential, then a filtering process needs to take place. So taking all of those ideas and coming down to 3 or 4 that have potential. So that filtering process leads to that banking idea, right? Because you're going to choose to work on 3 or 4. If you've got 30, then you've got another 27 ideas that haven't been picked. Okay?
Right.
As a leader of that process, I would say if I was coaching that leader, I would say, you might have some good ideas yourself. However, what's better for the buy-in? And that's your question. If the ideas are generated from within the team has greater buy-in. If the team can understand that their idea and somebody else's idea fits together and could be a possible solution, they're going to be more committed to it.
Okay.
So allowing people to speak up within the team. And that takes a lot of courage from the leader. They're very hands-on. They're very controlling, perhaps. And so they tend to think that their idea is the best idea.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks for that, Glenn. I just want to say hello to one of our viewers again from Cebu, Louis J. Esparaga. So hi, Louis. Thanks for watching. Yeah. Okay. Glenn, you've lived in China for the longest time, right? Before you went back to Australia, and I'd like to, probably ask you to share a little bit of your experience in terms of, your expertise in creativity and innovation living overseas, especially you're dealing with, a very multicultural environment. So how was that like for you in terms of career, in terms of business, in terms of social engagements? Tell us a little bit more.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to when I said I was an exchange student.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I talked earlier about the focus for somebody's innovation. And quite often motivation for that comes from either an issue or an opportunity.
Yeah.
So an opportunity is something new that presents itself and you take advantage of it. An issue is something that you're dissatisfied with, and that creates that motivation to look for solutions.
Yeah.
So my parents moved from Sydney up to Brisbane so that I could start the last 2 years of my high school. And at the time, I didn't quite realize this. It's only in retrospect that I think about it. That first year, I was not very happy because I uprooted myself from my friends who I'd been going to school with for 10 years, and then come to a new place, new school, new friends. So I was unsettled. I wasn't comfortable. So that was my issue. I was uncomfortable, and I was looking for something. And so when an opportunity came, somebody came to the school and talked about an exchange program. I thought, right, here's my opportunity. I'm dissatisfied with where I am. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to apply and I'm going to get it. Wow. So I think for my personal way of doing things differently, I suppose being a little bit, I like to take somewhat of a risk, but not huge risks. But
calculated risks.
Calculated risks. At the time, I thought, I'm 17, I'm young, I've moved from Sydney to Brisbane, I'm not happy, I'll keep moving.
But Brisbane is beautiful. Not as busy as Sydney, but it's beautiful.
It's a great city. Yes, great city. But for a 17-year-old who's just left all his friends, it had no real appeal. So that was my way of dealing with an issue. And interestingly enough, then again, through that experience and family connections, I had a great interest in Asia. And so I ended up studying Chinese and going to China. First time was in 1986 as a teacher. So I went to the Beijing Foreign Language University. I taught English for a year. I took Chinese classes. And then I came back and I graduated. And I was so good that my university gave me another scholarship and sent me back to China. Right?
Wow.
So in terms of being creative and innovative, there is a difference across cultures. And we just touched on that a little bit before, and I said, I'm quite open to risk taking. I will quite often do things that a lot of people wouldn't do. And that's part of my culture, being an Australian. It's also part of my personality. So that's one of my individual traits. A generalization is to say that a lot of Asian cultures, Chinese, it's a very broad generalization, are not that, they're risk avoiding more than risk taking. So the kind of innovation that you see in Asia, so I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, which culture is more innovative, Australia or China, I'd have said, oh, Australia's very creative.
Okay.
But actually, I've changed my mind about 10 years ago that because of the level of competition in China, creativity is through the roof. In Australia, we describe ourselves as the lucky country, and I think quite a lot of people are complacent. It doesn't mean that there is no innovation. There certainly is. However, you don't see it every day as you would see in the larger cities of China: Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, Tianjin, those places. So, in terms of culture and innovation, quite often what you'll see within China is in the box creativity and innovation rather than outside the box.
Yeah.
However, that is changing because as China has opened up over the last 30 plus years, 40 years since the official opening of China from 1979 till now, the younger generation have been great exposure to Western thinking, Western ways of doing things, European, American, Australian, German, French, Canadian, other Asian countries. So now their outlook, I say kids under 30, makes me sound like an old man. But people who are under 30, who are entrepreneurs, business people, they're more, generally speaking, somewhat more risk-taking than their parents or their grandparents.
Okay.
So quite often you'll find that, so I'll just give you an example. I mean, and this is not to say good, bad, or indifferent. But the Chinese website Baidu is a copy of Google. It's not exactly, but
very similar.
Quite often it's similar. What you'll see is something was developed in the US or Germany, and then bang, oh, they have a similar thing. It's but this is how the Chinese economy grew, right? They reverse engineered. They would take some contraption, some mechanical device, and they would pull it apart.
They revise it, they tweak it.
How could we make this better?
So that's innovation already.
That is innovation.
Exactly. They skip that step of becoming creative.
But then what they've done is, in the last 10 years, I'll give you an example. When I first went to China in 1986, if you wanted to make a phone call, an international phone call, 1986 in Australia, I could pick up my phone and dial. It would cost a lot, but I could dial an international call. 1986 in China, you couldn't do that. Very few people had a home phone. To make an international call, you had to go to the post office. And register, give them the number, put down a deposit, be told which booth to go to.
Okay.
Since 1986 until now, the Chinese have leapfrogged in terms of a lot of technology, and so have other Asian countries. Right? To mobile phones. I mean, I don't joke about this. My friends in China, friends and colleagues and co-workers, everybody uses WeChat. There's WeChat Pay. There's Alipay. People have been using it for years. Last year here in Australia, I saw an advertisement on TV about one of the banks that had introduced some payment method on their phone. And the whole 30-second advertisement was a group of young people going out and the girl saying, "Hey, don't worry, I'll pay for it." And so it was kind of like a training video showing people, "Hey, you can do this now." And I just had to chuckle to myself, because it seemed very I don't want to say backward, but quite simplistic to what was I've experienced in China for the last 10 years.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you've had a very interesting experience, living overseas, for so many years, and you know, perhaps you could share with us just some of the major challenges that you went through, that propelled you to innovate, or to be creative and innovate yourself. And we're talking about you, Glenn, as an individual
Mm.
person, rather than with a team, or so what was the biggest struggle that you've experienced in life, in your professional career at that,
Mm.
and how you turned yourself around? I mean,
Okay.
probably our viewers are experiencing the same thing these days, and your expertise on creativity and innovation would serve as a very great guide for everybody.
So originally, I uh, I fell into hospitality.
Yeah.
As I said, I went as a teacher and learning Chinese. I went back on a scholarship. I ended up being an English teacher.
Yeah.
So in those days, there were not the opportunities that people had now going to China, mainly the larger cities, and getting jobs with an accounting firm or a
Hmm.
business. English teaching was the only thing. So I was an English teacher.
Yeah.
I swore I would never be a teacher. I would hate to be a teacher. I ended up being a teacher there for about 5 or 6 years. And then I came back to Australia
Hmm.
and I did a diploma of education. So I suppose one thing was I had very hands-on practical experience with no
Hmm.
formal qualifications.
Hmm.
So I was doing the job without
Yeah.
the qualification. I came back to Australia. I did my dip ed, and then I taught Chinese at university for a year. I
Yeah.
also taught high school. But again, that issue opportunity thing,
Mhm.
I was not satisfied with that. So
Yeah. Hmm.
eventually, I thought, well, I'll go back to China.
Yeah.
So I went back, and I was enticed to go back. So the first year I was in Beijing. The second year I was in Guangzhou.
Hmm.
As I said, I lived in Guangzhou as an English teacher there for a long
Hmm.
time. Then I came back to Australia, did my dip ed, taught here, and then I was dissatisfied and went back to China again.
Hmm.
I went back to Hainan Island,
Hmm.
and that's where I started a business.
Hmm.
What business did I start? A vocational training center, because that's
Oh,
the background
wow.
I had. So I
Wow,
had a
that's it.
partner.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, and it was a great place to do it. Hainan
Hmm.
Island, you know, the Hawaii of China.
Hmm.
It was the first place in China to really open up very quickly,
Hmm.
and it was a great place to do that. The business survived for a while, so I
Yeah.
think in terms of my business acumen, which was quite low at the time, plus my
Hmm.
partner's skills were questionable,
Hmm.
and it failed. So it lasted for about a year, and it failed. And so I ended up in a very dark place doing lots of different jobs
Mm.
and not feeling very good. However, working in Asia is
Hmm.
different to working in Australia to a certain extent when it comes to networking. It's not
Hmm.
what you know, it's who you know.
Hmm.
So I would say another part of the changing yourself, developing yourself,
Yeah.
being innovative for yourself is knowing people. And
Hmm.
luckily, I knew someone,
Hmm.
and they were friends, and I was his unofficial coach at the
Hmm.
time. And he got a new job at a hotel, and then he
Hmm.
introduced me to the chief general manager,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I got a job. So I
Okay.
fell into. I was lucky. So maybe it wasn't so much luck; it was just
Hmm.
building a network. It was
Yeah.
knowing people.
Hmm.
It was
Right. That helped a
being
lot. Yeah, for sure.
when the chance was there, I took it.
Hmm.
I worked for that local hotel for 4 or 5 years. Then I
Hmm.
was with Hilton for 6
Hmm.
years,
Hmm.
and then again later with Marriott and then Shangri-La.
Right.
So I suppose the career transition from
Hmm.
not knowing anything about
Yeah.
hotels to deep diving into hotel work and teaching myself and learning,
Yeah.
and then getting out.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got out, that was I suppose not so much a struggle, but it was again a risk taking decision.
Yeah, that was a massive risk on your part,
Yeah.
because being in the hotel industry is just so comfortable. You know what I mean?
Yes,
It's comfortable.
yes,
I
yes.
worked in the hotel for several years as well.
Yeah, it's a great.
So
it's a
I
great,
know you get
it's
all
a
the
great
perks
training ground.
and
Yes, but it's a great training ground because it's a world within a world. You've got
Absolutely.
everything there,
Absolutely.
and so that experience set me up for being a freelance trainer,
Mm-hmm.
and I did that. And again, the networking. I would tell people,
Mm-hmm.
I don't work with 2 or 3 vendors. Actually, I was probably working with 10. So
Yeah.
again, that volume, getting your name out there, being known, doing
That is so
a bit like
important.
we're doing now. We're having a conversation and other people are listening, and you're putting your name out there, and people will say, "Oh, hey, I know that guy. Oh, I know
Yeah.
Tinette." They're making that connection.
Yeah.
I suppose the challenges later I've had are, as I've been in our line of business, coaching, facilitating, training,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
is the continual need to upgrade myself. So it's like innovation. See, the innovation process I have here behind me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a continual
That's a really
process.
cool background you have right there.
It's not A to B and you stop. It's a continual process. So once you finish one round of the innovative process, you don't just stop. Even if you put a new product out on the market, or if you have developed a new workshop or a new program and you offer it to your clients and you deliver it for the first time, what do? As soon as the program's finished, you sit down and you go over all your notes to make improvements for the next time. So you had that initial innovation or that initial launch of a product or a service or a program, and then you continual improvement.
Yeah.
So I think
You can't
for myself,
stop. You can't stop. Just keep going. Yeah.
So I think a lot of us probably are certified in a number of different programs. So it could be MBT, Belbin, Thomas Kilman, Harrison, Hogan, all of these different coaching certifications.
Right.
I think that's good. You could spend a lot of money doing all of them. And I think after that, you then start to create your own. You start to think, well, how can I differentiate myself from the next coach or the next educator? And you start to become known for something. And I've worked with people who I know one gentleman in he's gone back to the US now, but when he was in Shanghai, all he did was communication and presentation skills.
Just focus on those two.
That's what he did. That was he was known as that guy.
So did it work out well that he focused on those two?
Oh goodness, yes, of course. Because there is such a need for that.
Yeah.
He had volume, and he was on autopilot, and he just did every few, probably did 5 or 6 programs, maybe even more a month.
Okay.
And he did fine. Right? Okay. So he was known for that. So he developed his own style, his own package.
That's great. That's great. Okay. Well, all right, Glenn, we have been talking for an hour now. That went by really fast. At this point, I think what I'll have you share with everybody is, your message to those who want to innovate themselves. What is your tip, that one big message? And of course, after the Facebook Live, we'll have to stay in the studio so we can, have a little bit of a quick chin wag. But what would be that big message of yours to people who want to, as you said, upgrade themselves or, be better, or just, transcend all the difficulties that they're going through these days professionally?
Contact me.
Okay, sure. Give them your no. Feel free in this Facebook Live to share your contact details. Definitely.
The one big tip. I don't think it's necessarily a tip. It's more, you attended my session in Manila when we talked about in and out of the box. And again, I'll go back to perhaps some people have a misconception of what is creativity. And I mentioned earlier about thinking, in the box and thinking out of the box, or nothing wrong with thinking in the box. That's in the box.
Yeah.
That means using the tools and resources that currently exist to achieve what you want to achieve. And that's perhaps making smaller changes.
Sorry, making smaller what?
Well, incremental changes.
Changes, okay.
Rather than big changes. There are also going to be some people who will naturally have that desire to do something bigger and more different and a little more crazy. And so they're going to be out of the box.
Okay.
And I think if people want to know more about thinking in and out of the box, they can contact me, because there's a process behind that, and that is understanding what are your limiting beliefs.
Correct.
And understanding, first of all, people don't quite understand what those limiting beliefs might be. And if anybody's being coached or is a coach, when you're coaching somebody, they'll say, I want to get my business up and running. Yeah. Okay, that's very general. What is it that you really want to work on?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they go through a commentary, lots of different things, and quite often it's external. It's my team, supply chain, advertising and marketing and sales.
Yeah.
But really, it's themselves. It's something that it could be a belief, because you mentioned it before. Sometimes that not acting on ideas is a fear.
It's fear, self-doubt. Yeah.
It could be, if I didn't have 10 kids, I could go off and do something. Or if I didn't
excuses.
Have this,
a lot of excuses.
I could go and do. Well, they're stories that we tell ourselves that keep us trapped.
Correct.
And never move out. I think figuring out what that is, and for me, and I'm sure many people have read this book. It's a great book. It's Who Moved My Cheese?
Yes, it's about change.
Yes, it's about change. And I don't know if I have it here on my desk. Here it is. Here is a piece of Selangor pewter. And it's
that is mouse. So cute.
So it's a piece of cheese.
That is so
and
cute.
There's a little mouse on there. And I bought this in Kuala Lumpur. I think it was in KL. Selangor pewter. It's a little thing. You can take that off, right? So it's a little.
Oh, right. That is so. That's really a cute.
So it's a piece of cheese with a mouse on top.
Yeah.
And so I thought of who moved my cheese.
Yeah.
And I bought it for myself, and I always keep this on my desk.
Okay.
And because in that book, there's a great sentence that says, "What would you do if you were not afraid?"
That's powerful.
And that's what I often tell myself when I have a challenge. And so maybe that's not creativity or innovation, but if I was to say to myself, what would I do if I was not afraid? I'm going to go. Maybe that was something that I've had with me all my life. But when I read that book and I saw that, I thought, yes, that's what I want to do.
It just validated what you already have been practicing. Yeah.
And so let me tell you one story about this. In 2018, I was on a business trip up in Shanghai, and I caught up with one of my clients. And she'd been at that company for a number of years, and I'd often have a coffee with her. And I arranged to meet her. We were having a coffee, and she said, "Oh, well, Glenn, thanks for coming and having the coffee. I just want to let you know that I'm resigning from this role and going to another company." And I thought, okay, well, that's good. Great, good for her. I was hoping to talk up and get some business from her.
Correct.
And so I was a little bit disappointed. But then I thought, no, that's good for her. She's been at that company for a number of years. It's about time she moved on. And then very quickly she said, "And it's because of you."
Oh, wow.
And I thought, what have I said or done? She said, "Do you remember a conversation that we had 5 years ago? And you said to me, what would you do if you were not afraid?"
Wow,
And she had remembered
stuck with
it as
her.
well.
Yeah.
It stuck with her. And when she had to make the decision to accept that new job, it was also something that had motivated her.
Great. That's great. Yeah.
And it moved
Good
her
for
on
her.
as well. So that I would say for people who, it's not for everybody, but it's for me.
Yeah.
What would you do if you were not afraid? Yeah.
There you go, guys. So, wow, that's really, really powerful, Glenn. Thanks for that. And to those of you watching us tonight and you'd like to get a hold of Glenn, he's on LinkedIn and his name is flashed on the screen right now. So feel free to connect with him. And if you need some coaching from an expert on, not change, but change as well, but more on creativity and innovation, please feel free to reach out to Glenn. And so Glenn, that's a powerful message. What would you do if you were not afraid? So guys, I hope you've enjoyed tonight's Facebook Live and that you were able to pick up a lot of wisdom from our guest tonight. And Glenn, thank you so much for joining me tonight and for sharing your brilliant ideas and tips and expertise. But that's only a like a teaser for everybody. So if you guys want to get into Glenn's coaching programs, he does a fantastic job. So Glenn, I wish you the best, and please again stay in the studio for a few minutes. And so thank you so much everybody for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
See you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.